The battlefield was silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear, broken only by the low growls of hungry monsters moving in the shadows. Smoke covered the ground, thick and choking, carrying the smell of burnt metal and blood. Broken machines lay scattered like dead giants, their twisted arms reaching toward the sky as if begging for help that never came. In the middle of this destruction, a little alien girl crouched beside a broken wall. Her body was small, fragile, and shaking. Her large eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, wet with tears. Her thin arms wrapped around her knees, and she pressed her forehead down, trying to hide from the horrors around her. She had been left behind, abandoned when her people fled. Too young to run fast, too weak to fight, she was left to die. She whispered for her mother, for her father, for anyone who would come back for her. But there was no answer. Only the distant rumble of claws dragging over stone and the sickening sound of breathing that was not human. She covered her ears as the monsters drew closer, their heavy steps echoing through the ruins. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a threat. She wanted to scream, but fear strangled her voice. The girl pressed herself tighter against the wall, praying the monsters would pass. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it would give her away. She dared not move, dared not even breathe too deeply. But the monsters could smell fear, and they were moving toward her. Their eyes glowed faintly in the smoke, yellow and cruel. Their mouths dripped with hunger. Her small voice broke through the night, a cry she could not hold back any longer. It was not loud, yet it carried across the battlefield like a fragile thread of life. "Help me," she sobbed, her words shaking. "Please, someone help me." The monsters answered with a growl deep and terrifying. They had found her. The girl's tears blurred her vision, and she scrambled backward, her hands scraping against the rough ground. She tried to crawl away, but there was nowhere left to run. The wall behind her was broken, and the beasts closed in from the front. Her sobs filled the night as she cried for mercy that would never come. One of the creatures stepped closer, its claws striking sparks against the metal floor. Its breath was hot and foul, rolling over her trembling body. She raised her arms as if to shield herself, though she knew it was useless. Her eyes shut tight, waiting for the end, her mind breaking under the terror. And then it happened. Footsteps. Heavy, steady, different from the dragging claws of the beasts. The sound of boots striking stone. Each step cut through the silence, strong and determined. The monsters paused, growling in warning, but the footsteps did not stop. Through the smoke, a tall figure appeared, walking with unshaken resolve. A human soldier, his armor dented, his weapon worn, but his eyes burned with unyielding fire. The little alien girl blinked through her tears, unable to believe what she was seeing. She had been abandoned by her own kind, yet a human had come. The monsters snarled, spreading out to circle the soldier. The human did not retreat. He raised his weapon, the metal gleaming faintly in the firelight. A single shot roared through the battlefield, shaking the air. One of the beasts fell screaming, its body twitching before it collapsed. The others backed away, hissing, their yellow eyes narrowing. The girl gasped, her tiny hands gripping the stone as she stared at him. Her heart beat faster, not only with fear now, but with hope. For the first time since the battle began, she felt the shadow of protection. The human stepped closer, his face hard, his eyes never leaving the monsters. His voice, rough but steady, cut through the smoke. "Stay down," he said. And though the girl barely understood his words, she obeyed. She pressed herself lower to the ground, watching him as if he were something beyond belief. The monsters snarled again, deciding whether to attack. They circled, but the human stood like a wall, unmoving, unshaken. He was only one man, yet he looked larger than the beasts themselves, his presence filling the battlefield with defiance. The girl's tears slowed. She clutched the torn cloth of her dress, staring at him with wide eyes. She did not know why. He came. She did not know if he would survive, but she knew this. She was not alone anymore. The night grew colder, the silence heavier. Yet something had changed. The battlefield was no longer only a place of death. It had become a place of choice. A human had stepped into the darkness, Not to run, not to abandon, but to fight. And in the middle of monsters, in the middle of fear, the little alien girl's cry had been answered. The smoke shifted as the monsters circled, their claws scraping the ground in hunger and rage. They were not used to resistance. Prey usually ran, prey usually screamed, prey never fought back. But this time, a human stood before them, steady and unafraid. The soldier's armor was dented, scarred by countless battles. His helmet bore scratches deep enough to tell stories of survival. Dust clung to his clothes, yet his stance was sharp, firm, like a mountain refusing to move. His eyes glowed with the fire of determination, the kind of fire that monsters could never understand. Behind him, the little alien girl pressed herself against the ruins. Her heart raced with confusion. Her own people had abandoned her, leaving her to die in the jaws of beasts. Yet here was a human, a creature she had been taught to fear, shielding her without hesitation. The monsters growled low, testing him, their fangs dripping with hunger. The human's grip tightened on his weapon. Without warning, one of the beasts lunged, its claws slashing through the air. The soldier moved like lightning, his weapon roaring with a deafening crack. The monster crashed into the ground, lifeless, its blood seeping into the dirt. The others pulled back, snarling, pacing like wolves waiting for weakness. But the human gave them nothing. His stance was solid, his breaths calm, as if he had fought this battle 1,000 times before. The girl's wide eyes followed him, unable to look away. She had never seen courage like this. She had never seen strength used for someone else, someone weak, someone like her. Every moment she watched, something inside her shifted. Her fear was still there, but it was joined by something new. Hope. The soldier glanced back only for a second, meeting her frightened eyes. His gaze was sharp but not unkind. He raised his hand slowly, signaling for her to stay still, stay low. She obeyed without question, clinging to his every movement like it was the only thread keeping her alive. The monsters hissed and circled again, angry at the delay. One leapt from the left, another from the right. The soldier spun, firing with precision, his weapon cracking again and again. Sparks lit the battlefield, smoke burst into clouds, and when it cleared, both creatures lay motionless. For a moment, silence fell again. The last two monsters hesitated, uncertain now. They growled, their tails whipping the air, their glowing eyes flicking between the human and the child. The soldier adjusted his weapon, daring them to try again. His body spoke a language older than words. He would not surrender. Finally, the beasts retreated into the darkness, their growls fading with distance. The battlefield grew quiet. The only sounds left were the crackle of distant fires and the faint sobs of the little alien girl. The human lowered his weapon and turned toward her. His steps were heavy, slow, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Each move revealed the pain in his body. He was wounded, though he hid it well. Still, he knelt beside her, his shadow falling over her tiny form. The girl recoiled at first, expecting cruelty. She had been taught humans were dangerous, selfish, merciless. She trembled, ready for pain. But what came was the opposite. The soldier reached out carefully, his hand steady, and pulled a strip of cloth from his armor. Without a word, he wrapped it around the bleeding cut on her arm. His touch was firm but gentle. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Why are you helping me?" Her voice was weak, almost lost in the wind. The human didn't answer. He only looked at her with tired eyes that held no cruelty, only determination. "Actions, not words," were his reply. He tightened the cloth to stop her bleeding, then lifted her carefully into his arms. She gasped, too shocked to resist, too weak to fight. For the first time since her people had fled, she felt safe. Not completely, not without fear, but safer than before. She clung to his armor, her small fingers gripping tightly as tears slid down her cheeks. The soldier stood tall again, scanning the battlefield. Smoke still rose in the distance, and danger lurked in every shadow. Yet he moved forward, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. The girl rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Each thump was strong, alive, different from the growls of monsters or the silence of fear. For the first time in her life, she began to believe that maybe humans were not the monsters she had been told about. As the soldier walked deeper into the ruins, the night swallowed them both. But the girl no longer cried. Her tears had changed. They were no longer only tears of fear. They were also tears of relief, of hope, of wonder. She had been left to die, abandoned and broken. Yet here in the darkest place, a human had appeared. And from that moment, her life would never be the same again. The ruins groaned under the weight of silence. The battle was over for now, but the smoke still lingered, curling through the air like ghosts of the dead. The human soldier walked carefully, his boots crunching over shattered stone and burnt metal. In his arms, the little alien girl trembled, her small frame weak and exhausted. Her eyes flickered open, glassy with tears. She stared up at him, uncertain, trying to understand. Why was he carrying her? Why had he not left her like the others? She had been taught since birth that humans were selfish, violent, creatures who cared for nothing but themselves. Yet here, she was, clinging to his armor, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her cheek. The soldier glanced down, his expression unreadable beneath the dirt and scars. His steps were heavy but strong. He did not speak, but his silence was not cold. It was the silence of someone who chose action over words. The girl finally whispered, her voice shaking, "Why?" Her throat ached from crying, yet she asked, again, "Why did you help me?" The human did not reply. He stopped walking, lowering her gently to the ground beside a broken pillar. He knelt in front of her, pulling another strip of cloth from his belt. Her arm was cut deeply, the bleeding slowed but not stopped. He cleaned the wound with a piece of cloth dampened by his water canteen. The sting made her whimper, but he worked carefully, wrapping the wound with steady hands. She watched him the entire time, her eyes wide. No human had ever touched her people without anger. No human had ever shown care. Yet this one worked in silence, his hands rough but his movements gentle. "You don't have to," she whispered again, her tears dripping into the dirt. The soldier finally met her gaze. His voice was low, calm, steady. "You're alive," he said simply. "So I help." The words struck her harder than the sting of the wound. Alive. To her people, her survival had been too small to matter. To the monsters, her life had been nothing but food. But to this human, her life was reason enough. For a long moment she sat in silence, staring at him as if trying to find the trap in his words. But there was none. His eyes carried no lies. His body carried scars of truth. This was a man who had fought, who had bled, who had chosen to protect when he could have turned away. The soldier tightened the bandage and leaned back, scanning the ruins. The quiet was dangerous. It meant the monsters were waiting, watching. His instincts screamed that this safety was temporary. The girl saw him tense and looked around nervously. "They'll come back," she whispered. Her small fingers gripped the edge of her torn dress. "They always come back." The soldier gave a short nod. "Then we move." He reached for her again, but this time she flinched, her body pulling back against the stone. She wasn't afraid of him hurting her anymore. She was afraid of slowing him down. She shook her head quickly, her voice trembling. "I'll walk," she said. He studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly, then nodded. He rose to his feet and extended his hand. The girl hesitated before placing her small hand into his gloved one. His grip was firm, pulling her to her feet. Her legs wobbled, weak, but she stood. For the first time they moved side by side, her steps tiny compared to his long strides. The ruins stretched out endlessly before them, dark and broken, yet she felt less small with him beside her. Each sound of his boots was like a shield. Each breath he took a reminder that she was not alone. The girl glanced at him often, studying the lines of his face, the scars that told stories she did not yet know. She wanted to ask more questions. Who he was, why he fought, why he saved her. but the words tangled inside her throat. Instead, she walked silently, her hand never leaving his. When they reached a collapsed wall, the soldier crouched, letting her climb over first. She slipped, nearly falling, but his strong hand caught her before she hit the ground. He lifted her lightly, setting her on her feet again. Her heart raced, not from fear this time, but from something she couldn't name. They pressed deeper into the ruins, the sky above still hidden by smoke. The monsters had not returned, but their presence lingered in every shadow. The soldier stopped suddenly, raising his hand to signal silence. The girl froze, her breath caught. For a moment they both listened. Only the wind answered. Slowly, the soldier lowered his hand and they continued. The girl exhaled shakily, relief washing over her. Step by step she realized something she had never believed before. Maybe humans were not the monsters. Maybe, just maybe, they were the light in the dark. As they moved through the ruins hand in hand, the first connection was made. Fragile, uncertain, but real. A bond born not of words, but of choice. A choice the human had made, and a choice the girl had begun to believe in. The ruins stretched endlessly, broken walls and shattered towers rising like the bones of a dead city. The human soldier moved quickly, his senses sharp, scanning every shadow. The little alien girl followed close behind, her small hand gripping his tightly. She tried to match his steps, but her legs were weak, and every sound made her flinch. The silence was uneasy. It was not the silence of safety, it was the silence of waiting. The soldier knew it well. He had felt it in countless battles. He did not trust it now. His eyes searched the darkness, his ears listening for the smallest sound. Then it came, the growl, low at first, then stronger, echoing through the ruins. The girl froze, her body shaking. Her wide eyes darted to the soldier, fear returning in a wave. "They're here," she whispered. The soldier raised his weapon, his jaw tight. He gave her a quick signal with his hand. "Move." They started running, their footsteps crunching over stone, dust rising behind them. The growls grew louder, joined by the pounding of claws against the ground. The monsters were hunting them. The girl struggled to keep up, her small feet stumbling, but the soldier pulled her along, never slowing. Behind them, shadows leapt from broken walls, yellow eyes glowing in the smoke. The beasts roared, their fangs gleaming as they closed the distance. "Faster," the soldier urged, his voice low but firm. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew they were close. The girl's breath came in sharp gasps. She tripped on a stone, falling hard to the ground. Pain shot through her knee, but before she could cry out, the soldier turned, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. He didn't stop moving. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his boots pounding against the earth. The monsters chased them through the ruins, their snarls echoing like thunder. The soldier turned suddenly, firing into the darkness. Each shot lit the battlefield. In bursts of light, the monsters shrieking as bullets struck, but more came. Crawling out of the smoke, their bodies twisted, their claws eager. The girl buried her face against his armor, trembling. She could hear his heartbeat steady even under the chaos. She had never known courage like this. She had never seen anyone fight for her, never believed anyone would. The soldier ducked into a broken passage. The walls cracked and unstable. The monsters followed, their roars shaking the stones. The girl clung tighter, whispering in fear, "We can't escape, they'll catch us." The soldier's voice cut through her panic. "Not while I breathe." His words were not loud, but they carried a weight she had never felt before. A promise. He set her down behind a collapsed pillar. "Stay low," he commanded. His eyes met hers, and though she was terrified, she nodded. The soldier stepped forward, facing the beasts that poured into the passage. His weapon roared again, each shot precise, each movement controlled. The monsters howled, lunging with claws that scraped sparks from the stone. The soldier fought like a wall of steel, every strike keeping them back. But one slipped through, breaking past his defense. It charged at the girl, its jaws wide, its scream shaking the air. She cried out, covering her face, but before the beast reached her, the soldier was there. He slammed into it, driving it to the ground. His knife flashed, in his hand, cutting deep. The creature writhed once, then went still. The girl stared at him, her eyes wide with awe and terror. He rose, blood on his armor, breathing hard yet still standing, still protecting. The monsters hesitated now, circling but not attacking. They had expected prey, not resistance. The soldier's eyes blazed, his body tense, daring them to come, again. For a long moment the ruins trembled with their snarls. Then slowly the beasts retreated, vanishing into the smoke, their growls fading like thunder in the distance. The girl crawled out from behind the pillar, her knees shaking. She ran to him, her small hands clutching his arm. "You saved me, again," she whispered, her voice breaking. The soldier looked down at her, silent, his breathing heavy. Finally, he said, "We move before they return." She nodded quickly, wiping her tears, her fear mixing now with something stronger, admiration. She had thought humans were cruel. She had thought they cared for nothing but themselves. Yet this man fought for her, risked everything for her without asking why. Together they left the broken passage, stepping into the night once more. The girl held his hand tightly, her trust no longer forced by fear but chosen. The hunt was not over. The monsters would return. But for now, she believed something she had never believed before. As long as he was with her, she was not only prey, she had a protector. The ruins stretched on, endless and cold, the night pressing heavy on their shoulders. The soldier moved ahead with steady steps, his weapon always ready. The little alien girl followed close, her small hand clinging to his. She tried to be brave, but every sound of claws in the distance made her heart jump. They had survived the first chase, but survival was not victory. The monsters were still out there. They were patient hunters, and they would not give up easily. The soldier knew this. The girl could see it in the way his eyes never stopped searching, the way his body never fully relaxed. They reached a narrow street, walls on both sides cracked and broken. The soldier stopped, scanning the shadows. The girl tilted her head, confused. "Why stop?" she whispered. He didn't answer at first. Then his voice came, calm and steady. "They're close." Her breath caught in her throat. She tightened her grip on his hand. And then from the darkness the growls came again. Low at first, then louder. The monsters had returned. The soldier pulled her behind a broken pillar. "Stay here," he ordered firmly. Her eyes widened in fear. "No, don't leave me," she begged. He crouched down, his scarred face close to hers. "Listen, you are stronger than you think. Stay low, stay quiet. I'll hold them off." His words were simple, but they carried weight, the weight of a man who had survived countless battles. Before she could protest, the monsters charged. Yellow eyes gleamed in the smoke, claws slashing the air. The soldier moved to meet them, his weapon roaring with fire. The girl covered her ears at the deafening blasts, but she could not look away. He fought like a wall, each shot pushing the beasts back, each step refusing to yield. But the monsters were many. One leapt from the side, slamming into him. The soldier staggered, his weapon falling from his hands. Another beast lunged, claws cutting across his shoulder. He grunted in pain, fighting with his knife, his strength fierce but strained. The girl's heart pounded as she watched him fall to one knee, surrounded. For the first time she saw the human struggle. He was strong, yes, but he was not unbreakable. He could bleed. He could fall. Fear tore through her, but then something else rose with it. A spark. A choice. She could stay hidden, trembling, waiting for the end. Or she could stand just once and fight. Her small hands closed around a piece of broken metal lying in the dirt. It was jagged, sharp, heavy for her size. She lifted it with shaking arms, her body trembling. The monsters towered above her, but her voice rose, breaking the night. "Leave him alone," she screamed. The nearest beast turned toward her, its fangs dripping with hunger. It snarled, stepping closer. Her legs shook, her arms weak, but she did not drop the weapon. She stood in front of the human, her eyes wide with fear yet burning with something stronger. Courage. The soldier, bleeding, looked up at her in shock. For a second, his pain faded as pride filled his gaze. The beast lunged. The girl swung with all her strength, the shard of metal cutting across its snout. It roared, staggering back in surprise. The strike was small, but it was enough. The soldier seized the moment. With a fierce cry, he drove his knife into another beast, pushing forward with renewed strength. His body moved with fire, each strike, fueled not by his own survival but by hers. The girl swung again, clumsy but determined, her scream echoing through the ruins. The monsters hesitated now, growling in frustration. They had expected weakness, easy prey. Instead, they faced something new. A child who refused to hide, a soldier who refused to fall. Together they pushed back. The beasts snarled one last time, then retreated into the darkness, their glowing eyes fading from sight. The battlefield grew quiet once more, broken only by the sound of the girl's ragged breathing and the soldier's heavy steps. He lowered his knife, blood dripping from his wounds. Slowly, he turned to her. She stood trembling, the shard of metal still in her hands. Her knees shook, tears streaming down her face, but she had not dropped it. She had not run. The soldier knelt before her, his voice low but strong. "You were brave," he said. Her lips quivered. "I was so scared." "Courage is not the absence of fear," he replied, his eyes steady on hers. "It's standing even when fear tries to break you." Her tears flowed harder now, but not from fear alone. She dropped the metal and threw her arms around him, clinging to his armor. He stiffened at first, then placed a strong hand gently on her back. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A bond deeper than survival. She was no longer just a helpless child, and he was no longer just a stranger. Together, they had faced the darkness. Together, they had stood, and the monsters for the first time had learned that this hunt would not be easy. The ruins stretched ahead like a graveyard of steel and stone. Broken walls leaned against one another, and the sky above was hidden by a thick veil of smoke. The human soldier guided the little alien girl through the shattered streets, his weapon ready, his eyes scanning every corner. He was hurt. Blood ran down his arm where the beast's claws had torn his armor, but he moved as if the pain was nothing. His steps were steady, his grip on his weapon firm. The girl walked beside him now, her small hand brushing against his leg, afraid to let him out of reach. The monsters had fallen back, but the soldier knew better than to think it was over. They were hunters. They would regroup, follow, and strike again. But he also knew there was no turning back. Ahead lay survival. Behind them was only death. The girl looked up at him, her voice soft. "Will they come again?" He nodded, his jaw tight. "Yes." Her heart sank, but then his eyes met hers. "And when they do, we face them together." The words struck her like a spark in the darkness. Together, not alone. For the first time, she believed that maybe she was more than abandoned prey. Maybe she was worth saving. They moved through the ruins until the soldier stopped suddenly. The girl froze, clutching his hand tighter. His eyes had narrowed, scanning the shadows. Ahead, the ruins opened into a wide field, littered with the skeletons of war machines. At the far edge, a break in the walls showed the night sky. An exit. The girl's heart leapt. "Out. We can get out?" The soldier gave a short nod, but his body remained tense. He raised his weapon slowly. "They're waiting." And then she saw them. Eyes in the darkness, glowing yellow, dozens of them. The monsters lined the field, crawling over the wreckage, their growls filling the air. They had gathered in force, ready to end the hunt. The girl's knees weakened, her breath catching in her throat. We can't fight them all." The soldier crouched beside her, his voice low and steady. "Listen to me. Fear will tell you to give up, but hope will tell you to keep walking. Which voice do you follow?" She stared at him, her tears blurring her vision. Then she whispered, "Hope." He gave a sharp nod. "Good. Stay behind me. Do not stop moving, no matter what. The monsters howled, charging forward. The soldier raised his weapon, fire bursting from the barrel, the battlefield lit with flashes of light and smoke. Beasts fell, screaming, but more surged forward. The soldier advanced step by step, shielding the girl with his body. The girl clung to his armor, her small legs struggling to keep pace. Every roar made her flinch. Every claw that struck near made her want to collapse. But his words echoed in her mind. Hope. She forced herself to move, to believe, to trust the human who carried her through the storm. One monster leapt from the side. Jaws wide, the soldier spun, his knife flashing. He struck deep, the beast collapsing at his feet. Another slammed into him, dragging him to the ground. The girl screamed as claws swiped toward her, but she grabbed a rock and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the creature's head, making it hesitate just long enough for the soldier to drive his blade through its chest. He rose again, breathing hard, blood running from new wounds. Yet he kept moving forward, step by step, toward the light. The girl's legs shook, but her eyes burned with determination. She no longer thought only of surviving. She thought of helping him survive too. She picked up another shard of metal, ready to strike at any beast that came close. The monsters closed in tighter, snarling, furious that their prey would not fall. But the soldier's fire never wavered, his knife never missed, and through it, all the girl stood with him, small but unbroken. At last the break in the ruins grew closer. The night sky shone faintly, stars peeking through the smoke. Hope filled the girl's chest, stronger than her fear. The soldier's voice rang out, firm and commanding. Run! Together they sprinted toward the opening. The monsters roared behind them, claws scraping the ground, teeth snapping in rage. But the girl did not look back. She only saw the light ahead, the stars waiting for her. The soldier fired his last rounds, then dropped the empty weapon. He grabbed the girl, lifting her into his arms, his strength burning through pain. With a final push, he carried her through the opening, into the open night. They stumbled onto the rocky ground beyond the ruins. The air was cold, fresh, free of smoke. The girl gasped, her eyes wide as she saw the stars above. She had never felt them so bright, so alive. The soldier set her down, his chest heaving, his body bleeding, but his eyes steady. She turned to him, tears streaming, and whispered, "You kept your promise." He gave a faint smile, tired but unbroken. "We're not done yet, but we made it this far, together." The girl clung to his arm, looking back at the ruins where the monsters howled in frustration. For the first time, she did not see only darkness. She saw light, not just in the sky, but in the man beside her. The night air was sharp, carrying the sound of distant howls. The little alien girl stood beside the human soldier at the edge of the ruins, the stars above glowing faintly through the haze. For a moment there was silence. For a moment it seemed like hope had won. But the soldier knew better. His eyes stayed on the shadows behind them. The monsters would not stop. They had tasted pursuit, and they would chase until either prey or hunter lay dead. The girl trembled, clutching his arm. "They're coming again, aren't they?" she whispered. The soldier gave a short nod. His voice was rough but steady. "Yes, and this time, they'll throw everything they have." Her throat tightened. "Then how do we survive?" He checked his weapon, empty. He pulled the knife from his belt, the blade shining faintly in the starlight. His other hand rested, gently on her shoulder. "We survive by refusing to stop, no matter what." The growls rose again, louder this time, echoing like thunder. From the broken walls, the monsters poured out, dozens of them, claws scraping the stone, fangs dripping, their eyes glowing with hunger. The girl's heart pounded. There were too many. She felt her legs weaken, fear threatening to crush her. But then she looked at the soldier. His stance was strong, his face scarred but calm. He did not tremble. He did not back away. Something inside her shifted. If he could stand, then so could she. The beast roared and charged. The soldier stepped forward, pushing the girl behind him. He met the first with a strike of his blade, the second with his bare fist. His body moved with fury, each movement sharp, each strike filled with purpose. but they were too many. Claws tore into his armor, fangs ripped at his side. He bled, yet he did not fall. His roar echoed against theirs, defying the darkness. He fought not for himself, but for the fragile life behind him. The girl could not watch helplessly anymore. Her small hands closed around a broken spear half buried in the dirt. She lifted it with all her strength, her arms shaking but her heart steady. She rushed forward, stabbing at a beast that lunged too close. It shrieked and stumbled back, shocked by her strike. The soldier glanced at her, just for a heartbeat, and pride shone in his eyes. She was no longer just someone to protect. She was a fighter too. Together, they pushed forward. The soldier cut down beasts with his blade, his fists even with sheer will. The girl darted beside him, striking where she could, screaming in defiance. The monsters snarled in fury, confused by the strength of two lives that refused to break. One massive beast, larger than the rest, crashed through the ruins. Its body was covered in scars, its eyes burning with rage. It charged at them with a roar that shook the earth. The soldier gritted his teeth, stepping forward, but his body was weak from wounds. The girl saw it, and for the first time she made her choice. She rushed ahead, raising her spear. Fear tore at her, but she screamed louder than the beast, her voice carrying through the night. The soldier shouted her name, but it was too late. She struck first, driving the spear into the beast's chest. It roared, slashing at her, but before it could reach her, the soldier leapt forward. His blade plunged deep into its heart. Together their strikes brought the monster crashing to the ground. Silence followed. The other beasts froze, staring at their fallen leader. For the first time they hesitated. Then, slowly, they backed away, snarling, retreating into the night. One by one, their glowing eyes vanished into the ruins. The battlefield grew quiet. The girl collapsed to her knees, the broken spear slipping from her hands. Her body shook, but her eyes stayed wide with wonder. She turned to the soldier, who stood bloodied and broken, yet still on his feet. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. He shook his head, kneeling beside her. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. "No, we saved each other." Tears filled her eyes. She had been abandoned, left to die, told that humans were cruel. Yet here in the darkest night, a human had been the light that carried her through. She leaned against him, her small arms wrapping around his chest. His body was heavy with pain, but he placed his arm around her in return. For the first time, she felt safe. Not because the monsters were gone, but because she had found someone who refused to let her die. The stars shone brighter now, breaking through the smoke. The girl looked up at them, her voice soft but full of meaning. "When everyone left me, you stayed." The soldier's reply was simple, but it carried the strength of humanity. "That's what we do." And in that moment, the little alien girl understood what her people had never taught her. Humans were not monsters. They were hope. They were strength. They were light in the ruins.